May 13, 1985, West Philadelphia, Osage Avenue, a quiet, tree-lined street in a predominantly black, middle-class neighborhood. Children play on sidewalks. Families sit on their porches on this warm spring evening. At 5:27 p.m., a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter hovers over one house, 6221 Osage Avenue. An officer leans out and drops something onto the roof. It's a bomb. 4 pounds of C4 military explosive and Tovex, placed in a satchel with a time pencil detonator. The bomb explodes. The house catches fire. And then, for the next hour and a half, as flames spread from house to house, destroying an entire city block, Philadelphia police and firefighters stand by and watch. They've been ordered to let the fire burn. By the time the fire is finally extinguished, 61 homes have been destroyed. An entire neighborhood is gone. And in the rubble of 6221 Osage Avenue, investigators will find 11 bodies. 6 adults. 5 children, aged 7 to 14. This is not a foreign war zone. This is not a military operation against enemy combatants. This is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. An American city. American police. American citizens. The police dropped a bomb from a helicopter onto a residential neighborhood and then let the fire burn, destroying 61 homes and killing 11 people, including 5 children. No police officer was ever charged. No official was prosecuted for the deaths. The only person who went to prison in connection with MOVE was a survivor who'd been convicted years earlier. This is the story of the MOVE bombing, the day Philadelphia became the first and only American city to bomb its own citizens from the air. A story of governmental overreach, racial injustice, disregard for black lives, and a massacre that's been largely erased from American memory. To understand why Philadelphia police bombed a residential neighborhood, you need to understand MOVE, a black liberation and environmental organization that the city had been trying to suppress for over a decade. MOVE was founded in 1972 by John Africa, born Vincent Leifert, a black man from West Philadelphia who developed a philosophy he called the Guidelines. It combined black power ideology, environmental activism, anti-technology beliefs, animal rights, and revolutionary politics. MOVE members took Africa as their last name, Ramona Africa, Frank Africa, etc., wore their hair in dreadlocks, opposed modern technology and medicine, advocated for animal rights and raw food diets, lived communally, engaged in loud, profanity-laced political protests via bullhorn, were armed for self-defense, confronted police and authorities directly. The Philadelphia establishment, police, politicians, neighbors, found MOVE intolerable. Their confrontational style, their bullhorn protests at all hours, their rejection of social norms, their armed stance. All of it made them targets. But here's the crucial context. MOVE was a black organization in a city with a long history of police brutality against black communities. They were radicals in the era of COINTELPRO, when the FBI actively targeted black liberation movements. They were revolutionaries in a system that violently suppressed revolution. Were they difficult neighbors? Yes. Were their tactics confrontational? Absolutely. Did that justify what happened? No. The conflict between MOVE and Philadelphia authorities escalated throughout the 1970s. MOVE's headquarters at 309 North 33rd Street became a fortress. Armed members, reinforced walls, confrontational rhetoric via bullhorn. On August 8, 1978, police attempted to evict MOVE from the property. What followed was a shootout. One police officer, James Ramp, was killed. Several other officers and firefighters were wounded. MOVE maintains to this day that Ramp was killed by police crossfire, not by MOVE members. After the shootout, 9 MOVE members were arrested and convicted of third-degree murder. They received sentences of 30 to 100 years in prison. This despite unclear evidence about who fired the fatal shot. The MOVE 9 convictions were controversial. All 9 received identical sentences despite different levels of involvement. Ballistics evidence was inconclusive. Some MOVE members weren't even present during the shooting. The trial was seen by many as politically motivated. But MOVE wasn't destroyed. Members regrouped at a new location, 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia authorities, now led by Mayor Wilson Goode, the city's first black mayor, weren't going to let them rebuild. By 1985, MOVE had been at 6221 Osage Avenue for several years. The row house had been fortified with lumber and metal. MOVE members used bullhorns to broadcast political messages, sometimes at all hours, sometimes profanity-laced, often about the MOVE 9 political prisoners. The neighbors were increasingly frustrated. This was a quiet, middle-class black neighborhood. Residents had worked hard to buy these homes, to create a stable community. MOVE's amplified messages disrupted that. But the neighbors' complaints weren't just about noise. Many felt the city was using MOVE as an excuse to come into their neighborhood with heavy-handed tactics. Some neighbors supported MOVE's right to be there, even if they didn't agree with their methods. Others just wanted peace and quiet. The city framed the situation as a standoff. MOVE was terrorizing the neighborhood. They had to be removed, for the safety of everyone. What the city didn't say, they were planning a military-style assault on a residential neighborhood. In early 1985, newly elected Mayor Wilson Goode authorized police to prepare for a confrontation with MOVE. The goal: force MOVE members out of the house, arrest them on various charges, tear down the fortifications. But the plan that developed was extraordinary in its aggression. Police Commissioner Gregor Sambour would lead the operation with hundreds of police officers, SWAT teams, explosive charges, tear gas, deluge guns, powerful water cannons, and, this is crucial, the authorization to use whatever force necessary. The police consulted with the FBI and ATF. They practiced on a mock-up of the MOVE house. They brought in military equipment. On May 13, 1985, they executed the plan. Early on the morning of May 13, Mother's Day, police began evacuating Osage Avenue. Residents were told to leave their homes. Some refused, not wanting to abandon their property. Police forced them out. By dawn, the street was surrounded. Hundreds of officers, armored vehicles, helicopters overhead. It looked like a military occupation. Police announced via bullhorn that MOVE members had 15 minutes to surrender. MOVE refused. Shouting matches ensued via competing bullhorns. Then the assault began. 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Police pumped tear gas into the house. They fired 10,000 rounds of ammunition at the building. They used the deluge guns, powerful water cannons, attempting to flood the house and force MOVE out. Nothing worked. The fortified house withstood everything. MOVE members fired back sporadically. No one on either side was hit. By late afternoon, police were frustrated. They'd expended enormous resources and ammunition. MOVE was still inside. The standoff wasn't breaking. That's when they decided to use the bomb. Sometime in the afternoon of May 13th, a decision was made. The exact decision-making process remains disputed, but the result is undeniable. Philadelphia police would drop a bomb on the MOVE house. Police Commissioner Gregor Sambour later claimed he'd authorized the use of explosive devices to remove the rooftop bunker that MOVE had constructed. Mayor Wilson Goode claimed he hadn't specifically authorized a bomb, just whatever means necessary. But someone made the call. Someone decided that dropping military explosives from a helicopter onto a residential neighborhood was an acceptable police tactic. The Pennsylvania State Police provided the helicopter and the officer who would drop the bomb. The Philadelphia Police Department provided the explosives, 4 pounds of C4 and Tovex. This wasn't a precision munition. This was enough explosive to destroy a fortified bunker or a house. At 5:27 p.m., the Pennsylvania State Police helicopter made its approach over Osage Avenue. An officer leaned out with the satchel containing the bomb. He dropped it onto the roof of 6221 Osage Avenue. The explosion was immediate. The rooftop bunker, MOVE's fortified position, was destroyed. But the explosion also ruptured fuel containers that MOVE had stored on the roof, either gasoline for generators or diesel fuel. Accounts vary. The house caught fire. And then came the decision that would define the massacre. Fire Commissioner William Richmond ordered firefighters to let the fire burn. For the next 90 minutes, as flames spread from 6221 Osage Avenue to neighboring houses, Philadelphia firefighters stood by and watched. "Let the bunker burn," were the orders. The idea was that the fire would destroy MOVE's fortifications and force them out. Once the fire had served its purpose, it would be extinguished. But fire doesn't follow orders. 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Fire spreads to adjacent row houses. The entire block is connected, row houses share walls. Fire moving through one house can easily spread to the next. 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Multiple houses are now burning. Neighbors who'd been evacuated watch in horror as their homes catch fire. 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. The fire is clearly out of control. The wind is carrying embers. The flames are spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Still, firefighters aren't ordered to intervene. Later, Fire Commissioner Richmond would claim he made a tactical decision, that fighting the fire would endanger firefighters due to potential gunfire from MOVE. But MOVE members weren't shooting, they were trying to escape the inferno. The truth was simpler and more damning. Authorities wanted MOVE destroyed, and if that meant burning down houses to do it, so be it. Inside the burning house, 13 MOVE members, 6 adults and 7 children, faced a horrific choice: burn to death or try to escape. According to survivors, MOVE members tried to escape through the back of the house as flames engulfed the building. They broke through a wall in the basement, attempting to flee through an alley. Here's where accounts become critical and disputed. MOVE survivors claim, as members tried to escape, police opened fire on them, forcing them back into the burning building. Police shot at anyone trying to flee, trapping them in the inferno. Police claim they saw people trying to escape and held fire. Some members made it out, 2 survivors, but others retreated back into the house for unknown reasons. What's undisputed? Only 2 people escaped alive: Ramona Africa, an adult, and Bertie Africa, a 13-year-old boy, born Michael Moses Ward. Both were severely burned. 11 people died in the fire, 6 adults and 5 children. The victims: John Africa, founder; Frank James Africa; Conrad Hampton Africa; Teresa Brooks Africa; Rhonda Harris Africa; Raymond Foster Africa; Zanetta Dotson Africa, age 14; Patricia Tree Dotson Africa, age 14; Delicia or Africa, age 13; Netta or Africa, age 12; Tommaso Lavino Africa, age 9; Phil Africa, age 13. Later found to have survived to basement but died when fire department finally flooded the ruins. 5 children, age 9 to 14, burned to death or died from smoke inhalation while Philadelphia police and firefighters watched. By the time firefighters were finally ordered to actively fight the blaze, it was too late to save most of the block. Final toll: 61 homes completely destroyed, 250 people left homeless, 11 people dead, an entire city block reduced to rubble. Residents who'd lived on Osage Avenue for decades, who'd raised families there, who'd invested their life savings in those homes, lost everything. And they lost it because their city government dropped a bomb and let it burn. In the days following the bombing, Philadelphia was in shock. The images were broadcast nationally. A residential neighborhood engulfed in flames, rows of houses reduced to smoking rubble, bodies being recovered from the ruins. Mayor Wilson Goode, the city's first black mayor, faced intense criticism. He'd authorized an operation that killed 5 children. He'd allowed a bomb to be dropped on a residential neighborhood. He'd presided over the destruction of 61 homes. But Goode's response was defensive and evasive. He claimed he hadn't specifically authorized the bomb, though he'd authorized whatever means necessary. He blamed MOVE for not surrendering. He suggested the fire got out of control unexpectedly. Police Commissioner Gregor Sambor was equally defensive. He claimed the operation was necessary to protect the neighborhood. The bomb was meant only to destroy the bunker. The fire was unforeseen. Fire Commissioner William Richmond defended the decision to let it burn. claiming firefighter safety required it. None of them took responsibility for the deaths. In June 1985, Mayor Goode appointed a commission to investigate the bombing. The Philadelphia Special Investigation Commission, PSIC, known as the MOVE Commission, spent months interviewing witnesses, reviewing evidence, and analyzing the decisions made. Their report, released in March 1986, was damning. Key findings. The decision to drop the bomb was unconscionable. Allowing the fire to burn was grossly negligent and clearly risked lives. The entire operation was reckless, ill-conceived, and hastily approved. Police used excessive force. City officials failed in their responsibilities. The deaths were preventable. On police actions, the commission found that police had used 10,000 rounds of ammunition against a house containing children, that they'd used explosives in a residential area without adequate planning, and that their tactics were grossly negligent. On the fire, the decision to let the fire burn was found to be unjustifiable. Fire Commissioner Richmond had no valid reason to withhold firefighting efforts. The spread of the fire was foreseeable and preventable. On the deaths, the commission couldn't definitively determine whether police shot at fleeing MOVE members, as survivors claimed, but they found the police response to escape attempts was at minimum inadequate and possibly criminal. Recommendations. The commission recommended criminal charges against responsible officials and policy changes to prevent similar events. But recommendations aren't prosecutions. Despite the commission's findings, no police officers or city officials were criminally charged in connection with the deaths. District Attorney Ed Rendell, later Pennsylvania governor, declined to prosecute. His reasoning: while the operation was poorly planned and recklessly executed, he couldn't prove specific criminal intent. The officials believed they were acting appropriately, even if they were catastrophically wrong. Think about that logic. 11 people died, including 5 children, because city officials dropped a bomb and let a fire burn. But because the officials believed they were justified, no crime was committed. No one was charged with manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, reckless endangerment, child endangerment, destruction of property, civil rights violations. Nothing. The only person who went to prison was Ramona Africa, the adult survivor. She was convicted of riot and conspiracy charges and sentenced to 7 years. She was sentenced for surviving the massacre. Survivors and displaced residents filed civil lawsuits against the city. In 1996, 11 years after the bombing, a jury found the city liable and awarded $1.5 million to the survivor Ramona Africa and relatives of 2 MOVE members who died. In a separate case, residents of the destroyed homes received a $12 million settlement from the city for the loss of their property. But money can't replace 5 children. Money can't bring back a neighborhood. And the settlements weren't an admission of criminal wrongdoing, just civil liability. The city promised to rebuild the destroyed homes. New houses would be constructed for the displaced residents. The neighborhood would be restored, but the rebuilding was botched. The new homes, constructed in the late 1980s and early 1990s, were poorly built. Within years, they had structural problems, code violations, water damage, foundation issues, electrical problems. The shoddy construction became another scandal. Residents who'd already lost their homes in the bombing now lived in defective replacements. Some sued the city again. Some just gave up and moved away. The neighborhood never fully recovered. The social fabric was torn. Families scattered. The block that once was home to thriving black middle-class families became a symbol of governmental failure and broken promises. In the years following the bombing, the story of MOVE gradually faded from national memory. Why? Several factors. Time. As years passed, other events dominated news cycles. Complexity. The story involves radical politics, confrontational tactics, complicated backstory. Race. The victims were black in a black neighborhood in a city used to police brutality against black communities. Location. Philadelphia, not a media capital, easier to ignore. Discomfort. The story forces uncomfortable questions about state violence and racial injustice. The MOVE bombing should be as well known as Waco or Ruby Ridge. But most Americans have never heard of it. It's not taught in schools. It's rarely mentioned in discussions of police violence or government overreach. The erasure is so complete that in 2021, 36 years after the bombing, it was revealed that the University of Pennsylvania Museum and the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office had been keeping remains of MOVE bombing victims without family knowledge or consent, using them for anthropological study. This scandal briefly brought MOVE back into headlines, but the renewed attention was fleeting. The MOVE bombing crystallizes several truths about state violence in America. 1. Black lives are devalued. Would Philadelphia police have dropped a bomb on a white neighborhood? The question answers itself. The operation was possible because the lives endangered black children in a black neighborhood were deemed expendable. 2. Officer safety justifies anything. The entire operation was justified by the claim that MOVE posed a danger. This same logic, officer safety, is used to justify countless police killings. When officers feel threatened or claim to, any level of force becomes justified. 3. No accountability for killings. No officers were charged. No officials prosecuted. This pattern, police killings without accountability, is a feature, not a bug, of American policing. 4. The state has a monopoly on violence. MOVE was armed for self-defense, which was framed as dangerous and criminal. But when the state uses far greater violence, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, bombs, fire, it's framed as necessary law enforcement. 5. Radical dissent is met with destruction. MOVE was a radical political organization challenging the system. The system responded by literally bombing them out of existence. This echoes the FBI's COINTELPRO operations, the bombing of the MOVE headquarters in 1978, and countless other examples of state violence against radical movements. Ramona Africa, the adult survivor, spent 7 years in prison for surviving the bombing. When she was released in 1992, she became a vocal advocate for the MOVE 9 prisoners and a spokesperson keeping the MOVE story alive. She testified about what happened in the house, about police shooting at people trying to escape, about watching children burn to death, about surviving an inferno while police stood by. Her testimony was largely dismissed or ignored. She was characterized as a radical, a MOVE propagandist, unreliable. But she was also the only adult survivor of a massacre, and her story has remained consistent for nearly 40 years. In interviews, she's described the horror of that day, the heat, the smoke, the screams of children, the impossibility of escape. She's described what it's like to survive when 11 others didn't, especially the 5 children. And she's described her fury at a system that imprisoned her for surviving while freeing the people who dropped the bomb. Let's not forget the 5 children who died. Zanetta Dotson Africa, 14. Liked to draw and dance. Patricia Tree Dotson Africa, 14. Zanetta's sister Delicia or Africa, 13. Loved animals Netta or Africa, 12. Delicia's sister Tommaso Lavino Africa, 9. The youngest victim. These children didn't choose MOVE's politics or tactics. They were children living with their families. And they burned to death because Philadelphia police dropped a bomb and let it burn. Their deaths were preventable. Had police not bombed the house, they'd be alive. Had firefighters fought the fire immediately, they'd be alive. Had police not, according to survivors, shot at people trying to escape, they'd be alive. But preventing their deaths would have required valuing black children's lives. And in Philadelphia in 1985, that value didn't exist. The MOVE bombing prefigured issues that remain urgent today. Police militarization. The military-style assault on Osage Avenue, armored vehicles, heavy weapons, helicopters, was an early example of police militarization. Today, this is routine. Police departments across America have military equipment, use military tactics, and approach communities as war zones. Excessive force. The use of 10,000 rounds of ammunition and a bomb against a house full of people is excessive by any measure. Yet we continue to see police use overwhelming force, SWAT raids that injure or kill bystanders, flashbang grenades that maim children, aggressive tactics that escalate rather than de-escalate. No accountability. No officers charged in 1985. This pattern continues. Police kill, investigations clear them, no accountability. Whether it's MOVE in 1985 or countless police killings today, the system protects itself. Valuation of black lives. The MOVE bombing happened because black lives were expendable. This hasn't changed. Black communities are over-policed, underprotected, and subjected to violence that would be unthinkable in white communities. Criminalization of dissent. MOVE was a radical organization that challenged the system. The response was violent suppression. Today, we see similar patterns. Protesters labeled as terrorists, activists surveilled and harassed, dissent met with police violence. The MOVE bombing didn't have to happen. At every decision point, different choices were available. Before May 13th, the city could have negotiated with MOVE, addressed neighbors' complaints through code enforcement rather than military assault, allowed MOVE to exist even if they were difficult. During the operation, police could have used minimal force, could have waited them out rather than assault, could have prioritized everyone's safety rather than winning. After the bomb, firefighters could have fought the fire immediately, police could have ensured escape routes were open, officials could have prioritized saving lives over destroying MOVE. After the deaths, officials could have faced criminal charges, systemic reforms could have been implemented. The city could have genuinely rebuilt and compensated the neighborhood. None of this happened because the system worked as designed. The deaths of black people, children included, pursuing a system that threatens power is what the system produces. Some questions about May 13th, 1985 remain unanswered or disputed. Did police shoot at people trying to escape? Survivors say yes. Police say no. No definitive evidence either way, though multiple witnesses reported hearing gunfire as people tried to flee. Who made the final decision to bomb? Sambor? Good? Someone else? The chain of command and decision-making remains murky. Could the children have been saved? If firefighters had fought the fire immediately, would the children have escaped? We'll never know, but it's likely some could have been saved. Why was Ramona Africa prosecuted? She survived a massacre and was sent to prison. The decision to prosecute her was vindictive and political. Why were victims' remains kept? The revelation in 2021 that remains were used for study without consent opened new wounds and questions about respect for the dead. On May 13, 1985, Mother's Day, the United States government, specifically the city of Philadelphia, dropped a bomb from a helicopter onto a residential neighborhood, then let the resulting fire burn, destroying 61 homes and killing 11 people, including 5 children. This is not disputed. This is documented fact. No police officers were charged. No officials were prosecuted. No one went to prison for killing 5 children. The only person imprisoned was a survivor. The MOVE bombing should be as infamous as any act of state violence in American history. It should be taught in schools, discussed in debates about police reform, referenced every time someone suggests police need more military equipment or more aggressive tactics. But it's not. Most Americans have never heard of it. The story has been erased, minimized, forgotten. Why? Because acknowledging MOVE means acknowledging that American police can and will kill black children, that the state will use any level of violence to suppress dissent, that there's no accountability when police kill, that black neighborhoods are treated as war zones. These truths are uncomfortable, so we forget. If the MOVE bombing teaches us anything, it's that state violence, no matter how extreme, will be defended, rationalized, and ultimately unpunished when directed at black communities and political dissidents. Philadelphia dropped a bomb and let it burn. 11 people died. 5 children. An entire neighborhood destroyed. And America shrugged and moved on. There is no major memorial to the MOVE bombing victims in Philadelphia. No national monument. No prominent historical marker. The rebuilt homes on Osage Avenue are falling apart, a fitting metaphor for how the city handled the aftermath. But the people who lived through it remember. The families who lost everything remember. The survivors remember. And they're still demanding accountability, still demanding justice, still demanding that America acknowledge what happened. On May 13, 1985, Philadelphia police committed a massacre, dropped a bomb, let it burn, killed 11 people. 5 children. Their names: John Africa, Frank James Africa, Conrad Hampton Africa, Teresa Brooks Africa, Rhonda Harris Africa, Raymond Foster Africa, Zanetta Africa, Patricia Africa, Delicia Africa, Netta Africa, Tommaso Africa. Say their names. Remember what happened. And ask yourself, if this could happen in 1985 with no accountability, what's to stop it from happening again?